We've been theorizing about the FNAF lore for over a decade, but we as a community keep finding details we missed for years. From the endoskeletons burning in the hidden help wanted circus baby's furnace, to the hidden symbolism of ultimate customized cutscenes, we as a community of theorists keep on discovering more and more secrets and answers to burning questions we've had for ages. Today, I found a detail that can piece together two of the biggest loose puzzle pieces this franchise has to offer us. The mystery of Cassidy, the spirit inside Golden Freddy, and the identity of Ultimate Custom Night's vengeful spirit. No, Andrew, it's not you. We've met so many characters, been to so many locations, and heard so many stories in this universe, but a potential answer to one of the FNAF lore's most vital mysteries could be hiding all the way back in the third game. All we need to do is find it, so let's do just that. Alright, enough intentional vagueness. Today, I'm here to talk about a pretty overlooked detail from one of FNAF 3's many minigames that's been throwing me and other theorists for a loop for quite a long time. And the minigame I'm here to inspect is one of FNAF 3's 5 secret minigames, Stage01. FNAF 3 has two sets of minigames. The Follow Me minigames that you can play between each night, and the secret Happiest Day minigames that require solving specific puzzles to unlock. These range from pressing specific buttons on an arcade machine, to clicking on 4 shadow cupcakes across the map, to typing a very specific code into some wall tiles that aren't even explicitly shown to represent a keypad. Bravo, Scott. We're here to talk about that last one, and where it leads. To run through them quickly, the secret minigame for each night in FNAF 3 is, in order, Balloon Boy's Air Adventure for nights 1 and 2, Mangle's Quest also for night 2, Chica's Party for night 3, Stage01 for night 4, and Shadow Bonnie for night 5. Stage01 can only be accessed on night 4, and the hint you get to enter it in the Follow Me minigames that you can play between each night is a series of numbers, 395248. Weird. To enter the minigame, you actually have to type these numbers backwards into the keypad, so that would be 842593. The reason I'm bringing up these numbers is because they'll be important later. Anyway, once you're actually in the minigame, it's very obvious that the two animatronics on screen are Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, entertaining kids. The key mechanic of this game is Fredbear's well-known ability to clip through walls backroom style. Remember that? Cause I sure do. Anyway, the minigame has you clipping through a series of 9 identical maps arranged in a 3x3 grid until you reach a lone crying child, where you give it cake and the minigame ends. If you check the Happiest Day minigame after completing Stage01, you'll see that the Foxy Spirit, Fritz, has appeared by the table. But anyway, nothing crazy here, right? Wrong! This minigame's perplexed me for years now. Why are we being shown the perspective of Fredbear's here? Why are we being shown a dead kid in a location called Stage01? Also, what's up with those numbers? Well, I can answer that question right now. As some of you may know, 842593 isn't just any random string of numbers. It's a hex code, meaning it corresponds to a specific color. And lo and behold, that color is the shade of purple that William has in the FNAF 3 minigames. So whatever this minigame means, its meaning is directly tied to something that Afton did. And it can't be telling us that Afton is Fredbear, because the entirety of FNAF 3 is all about how Spring Bonnie was William's favorite persona. See, here's the thing. I've been thinking about this minigame on and off for ages now, and over that time, I think I've managed to figure out why it's so weird, and what it's really trying to tell us. And this revelation could fix our biggest issue with the early FNAF timeline for good. Let's cut to the chase. Basically, my theory is that this minigame is showing us the first death of the missing children incident. Now, I know that might sound ridiculous, but don't worry, I'll explain. See, after the Bite of 83, the springlock animatronics weren't just stuffed into a backroom and forgotten. In 1985, in the months before the missing children incident, Fazbear Entertainment used them as a secondary attraction, as Phone Guy tells us in the FNAF 3 training tapes. Take a listen.
Hello. Welcome to your new career as a performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Right now we have 2 specially designed suits that double as both animatronic and suit. For ease of operation, the animatronics are set to turn and walk towards sound cues. This is an easy and hands-free approach to making sure the animatronics stay where the children are for maximum entertainment/crowd-pleasing value.
Now, listen to this tape about the safe rooms.
Hello. For today's lesson, we will be continuing our training on proper suit handling techniques. As always, if there is ever an emergency, please go to the designated safe room. Every location is built with 1 extra room that is not included in the digital map layouts programmed into the animatronics or security system. This room is hidden to customers, invisible to animatronics, and is always off camera.
Let's go over what these two tapes have to tell us about how things worked at Freddy's. First of all, Phone Guy says that these tapes are for performers at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, not Fredbear's Family Diner, meaning that aside from the main 4 animatronics performing on their stages, you also had Fredbear and Spring Bonnie performing on their own bonus stages, which is likely how Afton was able to wear the latter animatronic to commit the MCI. But anyway, he says that these animatronics are designed to walk towards any sound they hear to stay near the children, which we see in FNAF 3 for the mechanic that we use to keep Springtrap away from the office. In the tape about the safe rooms, Phone Guy tells us they're invisible to animatronics and the security cameras, and aren't programmed to be accessible by any mascot characters. Because that's a really responsible way to construct a family-friendly pizzeria. Why am I saying this? Well, I think Stage01 could be showing us Fredbear breaking out of his programming and glitching through his animatronic map into a safe room, where he finds one of the children that William Afton murdered. Because there's something about Stage01 that I didn't bring up. Not every square in the 3x3 grid is the same. The stage right below the dead kid's room only has 2 kids, while every other grid has 3. Almost like Afton lured one of the children closest to the safe room. Wait, that's disturbing. By the way, the average person playing this minigame will never find this room with only 2 kids in it. It's not required to get to the end, and is considerably more difficult to enter than any of the other rooms. So this is very intentionally placed as a secret for attentive players. This explanation works with Scott's usual cryptic storytelling style. Showing us this Fredbear glitching through the walls and breaking a reality is an allegory for him breaking out of his usual programming to go into the safe room he shouldn't be able to access, and finding a dead kid inside. But what caused Fredbear to move around by himself? Well, if only there was a dead kid possessing this animatronic by 1985 that is known to give the animatronic supernatural capabilities. Shame there isn't one. It's really a pity. Yup. I think Crying Child, aka the Bite Victim, aka Evan, Norman, Dave, David, Adam, Timmy, Michael, Cassidy, Chris, Garrett, Afton, is possessing Fredbear in this minigame, and that's what's causing him to break out of the animatronics programming and break into the safe room. A reminder that the souls of the dead kids can make their way into the safe room freely, and Fredbear is consistently shown to be way more abnormal than his fellow characters. Golden Freddy teleporting in the original games is being shown to us here, for this glitching Fredbear sprite seemingly clipping through Freddy's. There's also cosmic parallels to this in FNAF 4, where the crying child is locked in a square, locked off back room, all alone with a seemingly occupied springlock suit, begging to be taken out. If you know what memory victim is, that theory explains this train of thought. But what happens after the MCI? Well...
This is just a reminder of company policy concerning the safe room. This is not a break room. It should not be considered a place for employees to hide and or congregate. And under no circumstance should a customer ever be taken into this room and out of the main show area. Management has also been made aware that the Spring Bonnie animatronic has been noticeably moved, and would like to remind employees that this costume is not safe to wear under any circumstances.
At this point, management is fully aware that Afton kidnapped those 5 kids, which is why they specify that customers can't be brought into the safe room due to Afton luring the kids inside that room specifically, and that the Spring Bonnie mascot costume that he used was noticeably moved. Now, I have a question to pose to you. Which animatronics were these 5 kids stuffed into? That's right, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Jonathan, and Fredbear. But if this incident happened while the pizzeria was open, Afton couldn't have stuffed the kids into the mascots. Well, I think Afton got the idea to stuff the kids into the animatronics when Fredbear walked into the safe room. Thus, I think that the kid that we see here is none other than a representation of Cassidy, the child who was stuffed into Fredbear and springlocked, later becoming one of the 2 souls in Golden Freddy. But before I explain how Stage01 literally freaking solves Cassidy, you should subscribe right now and maybe like the video while you're at it if you want to see more epic theories like this, because I'm trying to get to 50,000 subscribers and it would make me happy. But anyway, back to Cassidy. It just makes perfect sense. Afton lures Cassidy to the back room and springlocks her when Fredbear enters the safe room. Realizing he can stuff the other kids into the Freddy Fazbear mascots, he waits until the late hours of operation at the pizzeria and lures the remaining 4 kids backstage, stuffing them into Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy using the Spring Bonnie costume. Now, I understand that this theory might seem to have a few obvious issues. Don't worry, let me clear them up and explain why I'm confident this is the case. First of all, there's obviously Withered Chica's infamous line from Ultimate Custom Night.
I was the first. I have seen everything.
While some think this refers to her being the first kid to die, that's impossible. Crying Child has to die before the MCI happens. It's not even a matter of storytelling. It's not up to debate. It's impossible for him to die after the MCI if you look at the timeline presented to us in FNAF 3 and 4. If you want to learn more about that, I suggest you watch this video me, the Unwitted Truth, and made about the timeline of the MCI. But essentially, the FNAF 3 tapes tell us that springlocks are banned from Freddy's locations before the MCI, and in these minigames, Crying Child is walking around in springlock heaven. So yeah, impossible. Anyway, Crying Child has to die first, which means it's impossible for Susie to be the first death in the franchise. And you can't even say she was the first MCI kid to go either, because this line probably isn't even referring to Susie's death. I'm of the belief that all the animatronics in UCN except for the puppet aren't actually controlled by their respective spirits in the real world, but are instead fake creations made by the one Afton shouldn't have killed, aka Cassidy, wink wink nudge nudge. This would mean Withered Chica isn't talking about the ghost possessing her, but instead about the creation of Chica the character. And she's right. In the teaser to her sister location, we see that Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental supplies a location called Chica's Party World. We see this location in more detail in Secret of the Mimic, where we learn that it predates all of the Freddy Fazbear characters, going back to the early 1970s. So yes, Chica, you were the first, and you have seen everything. Another issue you might be thinking of is that the Stage01 minigame is the one that places Fritz, the Foxy Kid, in the happiest day, and that this fact isn't actually relevant to the narrative I made. Well, to that I say, Cassidy isn't one of the souls you can free in the minigames, and the other ones don't seem at all related to the souls they end up freeing. I think it's just completely random, and Scott made it this way to show a linear progression as you play the minigames and free the dead kids. Another issue you might have is the fact that Spring Bonnie is present on stage when Fredbear finds Cassidy. Well, I think this can be explained pretty easily. Afton lured Cassidy without the Spring Bonnie suit, unlike the other MCI kids. And here lies this video's big conclusion. Stage01 is showing us the birth of Ultimate Custom Night's vengeful spirit. Throughout the games, it's pretty clear that the possessed animatronics are lost, afraid, wanting revenge, and lashing out at anyone they can. They attack innocent night guards, guests, anyone who could be their killer. But there's one soul who did see what her killer looked like, who stared into the monster's eyes as he springlocked her alive. Cassidy. William wasn't wearing a mascot costume, just his standard purple attire. But here's the thing, Cassidy couldn't do anything about it. Unlike the other characters, Golden Freddy is immobile. He can't move by himself, no matter how much he wants to. So for decades, Cassidy was stuck inside this animatronic shell, knowing exactly who did this to her, unable to tell the others, unable to get revenge on her killer. Every day living in agony, knowing the man who gave her the most agonizing death a human could possibly suffer was alive out there somewhere. Decades trying to find him, until finally, Henry Emily burned him and the other horrors created by Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in the final game of the original saga. Finally, Cassidy could give Afton a taste of his own medicine. Insert mandatory his writing is this fire here. Okay, you understand the narrative I'm trying to set up here. Stage01 is Scott's way of showing us the fate of the 5th MCI kid, the one who's always been hiding in the shadows, the one whose tale we've never fully heard. One of the reasons I like this interpretation so much is because it actually gives Cassidy a character. She was the first. She was the one who suffered the most. Also, it goes against theories like BV5 and Cassidy Victim, which I absolutely despise, so there's also that. All this serves to give Cassidy an actual backstory and character, and tie her story into the story of Bite Victim and how he's freed through Happiest Day. More evidence of this comes from Help Wanted 2. When Unwithered, Gibby, and I talked about the MCI, we mentioned the weird order in which you need to place the puppets on each grave in order to get the Bonnie mask. First Chica, then Foxy, Freddy, Bonnie, Golden Freddy, and finally, the puppet. But why is it that you get an item related to the bite of 83 after doing all that? After all, we know the bite has to happen before the MCI. Well, Unwithered suggests that it could be because instead of going in the chronological order of these kids' death, we're going in reverse order, further and further into the past. So the bite would happen first, then Charlie's death, and of course the first child to die in the MCI would be Cassidy, Golden Freddy. It's uncanny how much sense this makes. With each puppet placed, we're going more and more backwards in the timeline. So, we've got a decent bit of evidence to suggest Cassidy was the first, and that her spring locking by William while he was outside the costume led to her feeling immense anger and even vengefulness towards him. I think that's a pretty solid narrative, and really gives Cassidy a satisfying origin and character arc. It even ties into the Silver Eyes, where the kid who possesses Golden Freddy, Michael Brooks, is kidnapped by Afton, with a Fredbear suit appearing in the main party room at Freddy's just minutes later. Sorry for the swear word, but I think that's a parallel if I've ever seen one. It's never explicitly stated who dies first in that timeline though, so sadly we can't take any information from the book in that sense. Additionally, the Give Gifts Give Life minigame that shows us the possession of the 5 MCI kids makes it very obvious that Golden Freddy's possession was different, independent. Instead of needing the puppet to grant him life, the 5th kid flashes into frame and is replaced by the head of withered Golden Freddy. In my opinion, this indicates that Cassidy possessed Golden Freddy by herself, without needing the puppet, because she was spring-locked by Afton. I understand if you're not fully sold on the whole spring locking thing yet, there's a lot more evidence that I and others have explained in separate theories, but essentially this franchise is absolutely overflowing, no pun intended, with the imagery of lakes made of blood and drowning. The novels, FNAF World, Ultimate Custom Nights, Tales from the Pizzaplex, FNAF AR, and even other games in the modern era have evidence. The Silver Eyes particularly have a strong point of evidence when Afton says being spring-locked is like being drowned in your own blood, which instantly calls to mind the imagery of red lakes that are consistently tied to Cassidy in both FNAF World and UCN. And that's without mentioning all the imagery in FNAF AR, which is a whole other can of worms. I highly suggest you look into it yourself, as it's one of my personal favorite theories, and it's great to get as many fresh eyes on it as possible. Anyway, we have a pretty clean narrative of Stage 01 now. On June 26, 1985, Afton lured a young girl, Cassidy, into the private room at Freddy Fazbear's. There, he found Fredbear, who had somehow wandered in by himself. He got the idea to stuff the kids' bodies inside the animatronics and wear the spring Bonnie suit that was on stage to lure them inside the private room. So he then lured Gabriel, Susie, Fritz, and Jeremy, and stuffed them in the main 4 animatronics in the late hours of the restaurant's operation. I think this makes a lot of sense. This minigame in particular has always been really weird, and I just like how smoothly this explains Cassidy's story and motives for being UCN's the one you shouldn't have killed. Also, it's just a cool narrative and helps Scott set up the abnormal behavior of Fredbear, especially if what I said about the crying child being involved is true. Overall, I'm very happy with this theory and think it's a great interpretation of the early lore that could give us a lot more context about Golden Freddy's true story. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, freaking like, subscribe, and comment some FNAF brain art in the comments. Alright, bye-bye chuds.